So then back to Dr. McKenney for our edition of 8.02 HR safety update.
Thank you very much. Jamie was going to be here to present with me, but we let her go on and go home. So I'm going to go through some slides. And another key to school safety, obviously, was referred to on the MSBA report. Terrell alluded to it, is the people that we put in front of the kids on a daily basis, teachers and staff. So the presentation I have for you tonight really starts with how do we screen and check the backgrounds of people that are potentially going to be in our schools, and then once they're in our schools, how do we monitor those background checks and get updates and make sure people haven't gotten in trouble with the law or done things like that while they're employees. And then a slide is about how do we train our employees. So our well-trained staff, as Terrell alluded to, is extremely important, and we put our folks through a great deal of training. And then finally, there are some things that we do post-employment to make sure that we're not only keeping our own kids safe, but we're helping keep kids safe that may be in school districts that those employees are going to go on and work in the future. So that's the outline. So if we could go to the next slide. Pre-employment, excuse me, starts with a basic application. On that application, we give the employee the opportunity to disclose things to us. And it's a lengthy application, but a couple things I would highlight that the applicant would disclose to us. Have you ever had a professional certificate revoked or suspended? Have you ever been convicted of an offense for physical or sexual abuse of a child? Have you ever been charged of child abuse? Have you ever been terminated or asked to resign in lieu of termination from employment in another school? Again, that's a self-disclosure screening. And then as the person advances through the hiring process, our administrators that are on site considering these people as they've moved through the screening process, they've gotten to that point, they will then do their reference checks, and that's usually with another immediate supervisor, principal to principal. And then if they are recommended for hire, then HR goes in and does the background checks that are required by Missouri Statute 162.068. It's known as the mandated disclosure form. It asks for questions. We're required to contact. We cannot offer a contract to somebody that we haven't completed this form on by law, Missouri law. 4 questions that the other districts have to answer. So we have to answer these questions when we get the form from another district. Districts are required to answer them for us. That is, was the employee subject of any sexual misconduct investigation? Was the employee dismissed due to sexual misconduct involving a student? Was the employee allowed to resign due to a sexual misconduct investigation? And finally, were there any children's division decisions or findings related to the applicant with regard to sexual misconduct of a student? So those questions must be answered all in the negative, obviously, before we're allowed to offer a contract. We do that, again, for students that are leaving. I'm sorry, for teachers that are leaving us and going on to another school district. We also conduct an FBI background check, which which is a fingerprint background check. It's nationwide, and that enters the person into the RAT-BAC program, which I'll talk about in just a minute. And we also do a background check with the Family Care Safety Registry through the Department of Health and Senior Services. And we also do a check with the Children's Division of Social Services in the state of Missouri. So the background check process and reference check process is involved, and these things are all done and must be passed before we issue a contract to a person. So oftentimes a principal will say, I'm excited to recommend this person and I want to get them into the board meeting that's coming up in 2 days. Can you get them in front of the board? I want to offer them their contract. We're super excited. I want to announce them to my staff. And we say, well, probably not, because we're going to go through all of these things and connect with all of these people and get all of these reports back before we can go forward and bring a contract to you, the Board of Education. And so that's all pre-employment pre-hire. Any questions about the pre-employment or onboarding process with regard to background checking our staff? If not, we'll move on to the next slide, and that is the Missouri Wrap-Back Program. So this is a Missouri statute authorized program. It allows school districts to access electronic updates to criminal background checks of current employees. So before the program began back in 2015, an employee technically could be fingerprinted, model citizen, and then while they're in your employ, they maybe things happen that you wouldn't be aware of because you don't go back typically and rerun background checks. It's a one-time thing. So the Missouri Backpack program fills that void. And so once the employee is fingerprinted, they're automatically enrolled into the Wrap-Back program. And then the district is notified of any employee in the program that is arrested. And it's for any arrest that is above and beyond a traffic citation. When the district is notified and then it's verified that the employee is currently employed with the district, then we get the report of what the arrest is. It's not a conviction record, it's an arrest record, so it doesn't mean immediately that that person is no longer going to be employed with the district. However, it allows us to engage with the employee and talk about the situation and find out what they're going through, and then we take it from there. So it may end up in a separation from the district. It may be that they go through a process and they're not working with us until it's adjudicated. There's a number of things that can happen after that occurs. The process and the roll sheet of people that are on that is updated every 3 years. So every 3 years we have to go through and we have to make sure everybody that's on our list is still employed with us, and if they're not, then we take them off our list. So we're no longer receiving notifications of people that aren't employed by us, and secondly, it re-ups the people that are in the organization. Any questions about Wrap-Back?
I have one.
Yeah.
Is this a pretty standard program that all school districts use?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, it is. We were an early adopter, but I think at this point most districts that I'm aware of are enrolled in the Wrap-Back program. Yes. And then the next slide, staff training. So we, of course, do a great deal of training with our staff. What you see here, and I won't read all of these things, but this is online mandatory training. So every employee gets at least this baseline of mandatory training topics. And you can see that, and this is provided to us through a vendor called Vector Solutions. Each of these bullet points are pieces that are either required training by law, state statute, or recommended by our legal services through our insurance company. So this is it's an undertaking. There are a few school employees here that I'm sure go through this each year, and it's two and a half hours if you were to sit down and do it all in one setting. These are computer modules that require a test after each session. Some of them, for instance, the Smarter Adults, Safer Children, which is a sexual misconduct staff to student reporting module. It's about a 45-minute video with tests in the middle, so you can't just turn this thing on and walk away. You have to be engaged, you have to watch it, then you take a test in the middle, and then it furthers the video. So they are also tailored to what type of employee group you're in. So for instance, if you see bloodborne pathogen exposure prevention, the custodial staff and the nursing staff get a full 45-minute program on that, whereas teachers get a 45-minute program every few years and then get a refresher. So it is tailored to the employee group. So some people get different versions of the presentations than other, which is great. This is the baseline. So our employee groups have meetings just Monday. You'll read in your Thursday packet this week an overview. Just Monday, the facilities and grounds and maintenance departments all came here, and they had their back-to-school meeting, and many of these topics were reviewed again in person, above and beyond the baseline here that they get online. They take it online, but also these topics were touched on again, things that we want to focus on. It's a little different each year depending on what maybe has been recently discussed, but it gives us another opportunity. So this professional learning is a little bit like steeping, and employees are steeped in the professional learning here, so it's not just a one-shot deal. They see this multiple times throughout their not only career, but then throughout each year of their career. Any questions about the trainings that we do regarding while the staff is here?
Yeah, I guess I do see two things that are missing, because mine equaled 4 hours with Matt and not 2.5. But these two are quick and easy. So I would love to see us do, and it's not a video training, it's not a test thing, it's just our board policy on technology use, and includes computer use. It includes interesting things too about not selling things. So not even having an email come if you're a Pampered Chef person, on the outside, yeah.
We do that one.
Yeah. It's not on there, or it's just on this slide?
It's just not in this particular program. So like, for instance, we did
Okay.
a cybersecurity one back in April.
Yeah.
So there are some that are direct person-to-person trainings that are embedded throughout professional learning over the course of faculty meetings during the
Okay,
year. And then
okay.
these are the ones that exist
Yeah.
specifically within Vector.
Because those they added it to Vector.
Yep.
And it was a part of that. So
So-
they added their own, and it wasn't a Vector video, it was just particularly to a district. So it was that one, and then there was like a mini 4E one that just was covered, so a PowerPoint, if you will, of not having food in classrooms or something, like and they added it to those trainings.
Well, in a significant number of these, like for instance, protection of pupil rights, like if you remember back to a year ago, we were having lots of conversations about PPRA. That's a district-created video that we then added to Vector. So some of them go within
Perfect, yes.
within the system that are either created by Vector or created by Teaching and Learning, and then others are done separately outside of the system.
But the technology ones mentioned are presented to the staff, it's just they come from Dominic's department, not through Vector.
Got it.
Because that actually came up today in our meeting this
We did
morning.
it all online, because I remember sitting at home doing it, it was a long thing.
Yeah, but it wasn't part of Vector, right? But good points, and yes, those are addressed, which
And,
is,
and the other thing I was just questioning, because it's not on here and it wouldn't be because it's not mandatory, there were some awesome additional trainings that you could take on your own. Just because we had purchased Vector, that down below, it's like you could train on these, but then you could also, peruse if you want to do additional learning on some other things. For example, one of them was dyslexia, and it was just something, again, we cover it during PD and staff meetings, but it was some
Yeah.
great stuff.
yeah, Vector's been a good program, and one thing that we've done this year because of the lengthiness of it is our staff asked if, typically we would present this to them at the beginning of the school year and they'd have till, Halloween to finish. And this year they asked if we could move it all forward. So, and we reminded them when we sent this email out that they asked for this, our teachers and employees did, but we pushed it out this year on July 5th. And with a carefully worded email that said, don't forget, you asked for this on July 5th. So but a lot of people didn't want to have to deal with it at the beginning of school because it's a bit cumbersome. But it's our baseline. It's not where the training ends. It's everybody gets this, and then we build on top of that. At the bottom bullet, it's kind of hard to see, but HR Innovations Process Audit, this is something we're doing this year, first time, at least since I've been in Human Resources, that we've had an HR process audit. It's something that we chose to do. We brought in, the company is called HR Innovations. The person that runs it, his name is Ken Rossick. He's a former countywide Human Resources officer, and we've met with him already. He comes in, and I'd say it's a little bit like the process audit that finance goes through. They come in and they say, we want to see these things, we want to spot check these things, give us these records. So we've already gone through the process of providing him the records that he's asked for. He will also be back one day next week to look through some investigation files that I'm not able to give him access to, other than he can come and sit and look at them with us in the room. But we think this is going to be a great way for us to, number one, we hope it's affirming in that he tells us, hey, you guys are covering your bases, you're doing a lot of great things, but we fully expect that we'll learn something from it as well, and he'll have suggestions on things we can do to shore up some areas if we do have any holes in our processes. So interesting process to this point with our first meeting with him. It's been very positive. And then finally, the next slide, post-employment. This is something that people may not think about, but exiting employees is an important process. Employees that are our staff, they have access to a lot of important and confidential data, which student information, other staff information if they're in human resources or finance, for instance. So we have quite an exit process for people who are leaving. And it has to do with turning things in, as simple as physical keys. We've got to collect those things, curriculum materials, shutting down access to things like student information system, our Google Drive, their access to talent ed records if they're in the human resources department, those kinds of things. Key card access being deactivated. These are all key safety components, is when someone walks out the door, they don't just say goodbye and walk out with a big ring full of keys. And then there is, again, to repeat the Missouri State Statute 162068, where we have to keep a file on anyone that we would have to say yes to that disclosure. When someone goes on to another district, whether it's public or private, we have a list of anyone that would be on, we would need to say no to as they move forward. So it really starts from pre-employment, training during employment, all the way through after the person leaves us. There's a lot of safety procedures and protocols in place. Happy to answer any questions. Okay, thank you.